Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Tayan. Annie Tayan, born May 1, 1965, was raised by her mother and has a lively personality. She loves to dance, play, and appreciate the simple pleasures of life. Annie cherished the dream of a large family, considering motherhood her main aspiration. She became a mother at a young age, giving birth to her first son, Jimia, when she was 18 and her second son, Sean, just a year later. When she turned 20, she had a daughter named Shane. Unfortunately, shortly after Shane was born, the children's father left Annie and chose not to be involved in their lives, leaving her with the hardships of single motherhood. Annie managed a household of 3 young children while living in a rented apartment in Maine. In 1987, when her youngest daughter, Shane, was just 6 months old, 22-year-old Annie began a new chapter in her life. She met Michael Palin, 32, a Navy officer stationed on the aircraft carrier Bramby. Their meeting took place in Portland, Maine, where Michael's ship was docked, and he felt a strong attraction to Annie during their waterfront encounter. Originally from Charleston, South Carolina, Michael was a respected Navy member, best known for his work as a computer systems operator. He was actively involved in military operations and received several awards for his service. Annie found Michael's Navy career impressive and quickly fell in love, telling a friend that he was the man she believed was truly worthy of her affections. After a few months of dating, Annie and Michael decided to move in together, starting a family with 2 sons and a daughter. Unfortunately, their lives changed completely when a fire broke out in their apartment. Annie was out at the time, leaving Michael at home with the children. Michael, along with Jimia and Sean, escaped, but Shane, who was too young to walk, was left behind. When Annie returned, she tried to enter the burning apartment to rescue Shane but was stopped by neighbors. The loss of Shane had a profound impact on Annie, who felt that the tragedy had left an irreplaceable void in her heart. As the police investigated the fire, they struggled to determine the exact cause of the fire. The circumstances surrounding the fire aroused the police's suspicions. However, the investigation ended without anyone being held accountable. After the tragedy, Annie and her sons moved into her mother's home in Portland, while Michael focused on his work and chose to live in the barracks. A few months after the move, another disturbing event occurred near Annie's mother's home. A shed in the backyard caught fire. Police quickly tracked down the source of the fire and found a lighter engraved with the word Bramby, the name of the ship where Michael worked. This evidence made Michael the prime suspect in the arson case. However, police were unable to conclusively prove his involvement due to insufficient evidence. After the second fire, child welfare agencies in Maine assessed that Annie Tayan's sons were living in an unsafe environment. As a result, they made the difficult decision to remove Jimia and Sean from her custody and place them in the foster care system under the Department of Social Services. This decision devastated Annie as she desperately tried to regain custody of her sons. Despite her efforts, she was unsuccessful, leaving her heartbroken and separated from her sons. When Michael returned to Charleston, South Carolina, he settled into a rental apartment and rekindled his relationship with Annie. Despite their complicated past, Annie agreed to move in with him in Goose Creek, a suburb of Charleston. However, her time there changed when she discovered a photo of Michael wearing a wedding ring, indicating that he was married. When confronted about it, Michael confessed that he had been married once but had long since divorced. He explained that his ex-wife, Dawn Breeze, and their 3 children lived at his mother's house in Savannah, Georgia. Although Michael assured Annie that there was no ongoing relationship with Dawn, she felt uneasy about the information. Annie considered leaving him, but decided to stay, believing that he might be the right partner to start a family with. Unfortunately, their life together soon turned sour. As Michael's behavior toward Annie became increasingly hostile and demeaning. Annie, who was planning to return to her mother's home, discovered that she was pregnant. This news caused her to put her plans on hold because she was excited about having another child. In October 1989, just a month before she went missing, Annie gave birth to her fourth daughter, Jade. Although she understood that Jade could never replace her lost daughter, she felt that Jade had brought great joy to her life. Unfortunately, a month after Jade was born, Michael's treatment of Annie took a turn for the worse. He began to publicly insult and humiliate her. Annie shared her concerns with a friend, expressing her fear that Michael would relentlessly pursue her if she tried to leave. His controlling behavior became more intense. He isolated Annie in their apartment while he was at work by disconnecting his phone, keeping it in his bag, and carrying it with him. Annie became increasingly frightened by Michael's actions. Just 2 days before her disappearance, Annie called her close friend Katie French in a distressed state. During the call, Annie revealed her plans to leave Michael. However, Michael threatened her by saying that if she left, he would keep their daughter Jade with him, preventing Annie from seeing her daughter again. Annie was in a distressed state, crying and begging Katie to come to her and Jade's aid. Unfortunately, Katie was busy and unable to help her. Instead, she sent Annie money for a bus ticket, hoping that it would allow her to escape and return to Portland. This emotional conversation would be their last. 2 days later, on November 7, 1989, Katie attempted to contact Annie but received no response. A few days later, Michael contacted Katie to inform her that on November 6, Annie had packed up and left without saying where she was going. Katie expected Annie to contact her from her new home. But after 2 weeks of silence, she began to worry. By Thanksgiving on November 24, Annie had been out of contact for 20 days. Worried about her friend, Katie contacted all of Annie's friends, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. Katie attempted to report 24-year-old Annie missing to the police, but was told that, since she was not a blood relative, she could not file a formal report. As months passed without any sign of Annie, Katie finally got Michael's mother's phone number. When she called, she was shocked to learn that Annie's youngest daughter, Jade, was staying with Michael's mother. The news confirmed Katie's worst fears. She believed that Annie would never want to leave her daughter. Shortly after this disturbing news, Michael was transferred to the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Despite the situation of Annie, the mother of his child, he showed little concern for her whereabouts. Michael did not contact the police or begin searching for her. Months after Annie Tayan went missing, an official search began following a report from her mother. The investigation quickly focused on her partner, Michael Palin, who became the prime suspect. Michael claimed that on the morning of November 6th, he woke up to find Annie had left while he was babysitting his daughter. He said that the night before, Annie had expressed a desire to end their relationship. He made no attempt to find her, believing that their relationship was over and that further contact was pointless. Michael also claimed that he was unaware that Annie had been reported missing or that she had lost contact with family and friends. When police searched the couple's rented apartment, they found no evidence, no clues, traces, or suspicious items that could help the investigation. Annie Tayan's case seemed to have stalled and no large-scale search was conducted for her. It is still unclear whether she is still alive, and any possible motive for her disappearance is unknown. The only confirmed detail is that the last person reported to have seen her was her partner, Michael. For 4 long years, there were no updates or discoveries about Annie. Her close friend Katie French was the only one actively searching for her, cooperating tirelessly with the investigation. Katie spent approximately $16,000 on phone bills alone and hired a private investigator as part of her relentless quest to find Annie Tayan. She contacted various organizations in the hopes of uncovering information about Michael's past. Katie was convinced that Michael was dangerous and untrustworthy. She feared him greatly, knowing that if he discovered her involvement with the police, it could put her in danger. In 1993, Annie's case took a major turn when it was transferred to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, marking a major turning point in the investigation. NCIS agents began a full review of the case from the beginning. They located Michael, who was stationed at Pearl Harbor Naval Station in Hawaii. When approached by Marine Corps police officers to discuss Annie's disappearance, Michael agreed to talk, but only in the presence of his attorney. He then completely stopped cooperating with the investigation and refused to provide further information. The Coast Guard gathered every available detail about Annie's disappearance and contacted South Carolina police. They asked for help in comparing their information with the records of the unidentified bodies, noting that Annie had given birth just a month before her disappearance. Then, South Carolina police reported a case involving a dead woman who had also given birth a month before her death. They sent a sketch of the woman, which shocked Coast Guard agents who saw it. They believed they might have found Annie Tayan. The discovery revealed a horrific murder. Annie's body was found near a highway in Jasper County, South Carolina, about 100 miles from where she lived with Michael. The crime scene photos were horrifying, showing a level of violence that agents said they had rarely witnessed. Annie's face was severely damaged and her skull was broken into 124 pieces, requiring nearly 500 hours of detailed reconstruction. It was also revealed that Annie's body had been placed in a navy blue bag that had been doused with gasoline and then set on fire. The burning bag was discovered at 6 a.m. on November 7, 1989, around the same time Katie French realized Annie had stopped answering her phone calls. Annie Tayan's dental records were used to positively identify her as the unidentified woman. After Annie's body was found, Michael became the prime suspect in the murder. Coast Guard agents developed a thorough investigation plan, starting with a review of his financial transactions. They discovered that on the day Annie went missing, Michael made a credit card purchase about 25 miles south of where her burned body was found. Additionally, his phone records showed that on the morning of November 6, he called his mother's home in Savannah twice, the first time at 4:35 a.m. and the second time at 5:17 a.m. Coast Guard agents believe that Michael killed Annie in their apartment and then moved her body to the side of the road, where he set it on fire. To advance the investigation, NCIS agents targeted Michael's ex-wife, Dawn Breeze. At the time of Annie's death, Dawn was still married to Michael and living at his mother's house in Savannah. After Annie's disappearance, Dawn divorced Michael and began moving frequently between states, as if she were trying to escape someone or something. The agents eventually discovered that she was living in Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1995, nearly 6 years after Annie's murder. They located Dawn, who had been engaging in spiritualistic activities for income. When the agents visited Dawn at her workplace to discuss Annie's disappearance, her response was surprisingly calm. She questioned the length of the conversation, expressing a desire to eat if the conversation was prolonged. This response surprised the agents, who had expected a more emotional response when Annie was mentioned. Dawn, however, remained calm throughout their conversation. During the 10-hour interrogation, Dawn's story initially matched Michael's. She said that when she visited Michael's apartment, he told her that his mistress had left him and that he planned to raise his daughter alone. However, there were discrepancies in the timeline of her visit. At one point, Dawn became quiet, looked down, and expressed a desire to tell the truth. Her subsequent speech was emotionless and tearless as she revealed what she had kept secret for 6 years. Dawn explained that one morning, Michael had called her urgently to his apartment in Charleston. There, she saw Annie's dead body on the living room floor. Michael then told Dawn to go into the bedroom to see his daughter. At the time, Dawn and Michael were still legally married and had 3 children together. Michael admitted to having an affair with Annie, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He begged Dawn to accept the child and help him raise her. Dawn suggested that Michael, not wanting to fight for custody of Annie, had chosen murder as a simpler solution. On the night of November 5 to 6, 1989, Michael and Annie went to bed after having an intimate moment. Annie soon fell asleep, and during this time, Michael picked up a crowbar and began to violently attack her. Shockingly, their daughter Jade was sleeping next to Annie during the attack. Michael continued to hit Annie in the head more violently, and although she tried to fight back, she eventually died of her injuries in their bed. Michael then contacted his wife Dawn and asked her to come over immediately. He placed Annie's body in a duffel bag and placed it in the trunk of his car, along with a can of gasoline. He then put Dawn and Jade in the back seat of his car and drove about 100 miles. When he found a secluded spot along the side of the road, he took Annie's body out of the trunk, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Once the fire was out, he quickly got back in the car and drove Dawn and Jade back to his mother's house in Savannah. Dawn's revelations marked a major turning point in the investigation, marking the first significant piece of evidence since the discovery of Annie's remains. Police asked Dawn to make a recorded phone call to her ex-husband, Michael, to discuss Annie's murder. Dawn agreed and contacted Michael, saying she needed to have a serious conversation because Annie's body had been found. Michael's response, "No, they didn't," confirmed to police that Dawn's account was credible. During the call, Dawn mentioned that blood had been discovered in their old apartment and that NCIS was investigating them as suspects in the murder. She urged Michael to come up with an explanation for the blood. Michael responded, "Okay, we need to work together and come up with something," which did not include any direct admission of guilt. However, his tone suggested that he understood the seriousness of the situation. He did not ask unnecessary questions or deny involvement, indicating that he knew what was being discussed. This conversation further supported the theory that Annie was murdered in Michael's apartment. At the end of the conversation, Michael warned Dawn to be careful with her phone calls and assured her that they would work together to resolve the situation. NCIS agents took Dawn to the crime scene to search for any remaining evidence. To protect her identity and ensure her safety as a cooperating witness, they disguised her before arriving at the apartment. Dawn carefully described and demonstrated the location of Annie's body and a sequence of events. She pointed out a spot near the wall and baseboard where a large amount of blood had seeped into the carpet and concrete floor below. Since Michael moved out, the landlord had replaced and cleaned the carpet several times, which is why there were no visible traces of blood. However, when the police used a special chemical on the concrete floor, a large purple stain appeared, indicating the presence of protein and matching Dawn's description of where Annie's body had been. Although the blood had soaked into the concrete, NCIS still had difficulty proving with certainty that the substance was blood. Therefore, the search for more physical evidence continued. Dawn mentioned a dresser next to the bed where Annie was killed, which contained a television covered in blood from the murder. Michael had said that the television needed a thorough cleaning because of the stains. He had then thrown it away, presumably selling it rather than throwing away a working device. Given his thrifty tendencies, finding the television was difficult. However, the agents were determined to find it. At this point, Michael realized that NCIS was watching him, especially after a phone call with his ex-wife, Dawn. Realizing this, he became very wary of their surveillance. NCIS agents were concerned that Michael might attempt to escape, threaten witnesses, or possibly harm someone. During a surveillance mission, Michael attempted to escape from the police, but was quickly apprehended by the police. As a result, on October 11, 1995, he was arrested. While he was being held in a military prison on suspicion of murder, NCIS agents interviewed all the residents of the apartment complex where the murders took place in November 1989. 3 months later, their efforts finally paid off when a neighbor revealed that he had purchased a television from Michael. Amazingly, the television was still working and in his home. The police quickly confiscated the television and sent it to the FBI lab for detailed forensic analysis. This examination led to a major breakthrough. They found 11 bloodstains on the speaker, which were later determined to match Annie's DNA, providing a key piece of evidence in the murder investigation. At this point in the case, Michael's attorney announced that he was willing to plead guilty, but only if the death penalty was dropped. Although the prosecutor was not happy with this development, military law required such deals to be considered at trial. Michael admitted his guilt without showing much emotion, recounting the details of his crime. His story showed no signs of remorse or sorrow. Michael Palin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 30 years. Although Dawn knew about her husband's crimes and kept quiet for 6 years, she avoided legal consequences because her confession to NCIS was crucial in moving the investigation forward. Annie's children, including her son and daughter, now know what happened to their biological mother and understand that she did not abandon them. Jade, Annie's daughter with Michael, has grown into a beautiful woman. In a surprising turn of events, Michael Palin was released from prison in 2013 after serving only 17 years, supposedly for good behavior. His whereabouts. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Karina Vetrano. On Tuesday, August 2, 2016, Karina Vetrano met her father, Philip, after work. They had planned to spend time together as family gatherings had become increasingly rare due to everyone's busy schedules. Karina was juggling 2 jobs at the time. Philip picked her up and took her to his home, where they shared stories about their week. As Karina prepared to head home, she invited her father to join her for a jog, an activity they often did together. However, Philip declined, explaining that his back was hurting badly and he thought he might need a new prescription or that the change in weather was affecting him. He offered to call a cab for her instead. Karina turned down the offer because she was focused on training for an upcoming marathon and thought jogging would be helpful. Unbeknownst to her parents, this would be the last time they saw their daughter. At 5:45 p.m., she left her father's house to go for a jog. Starting at Spring Creek Park, a peaceful oasis surrounded by greenery in the heart of the city. Large parts of the park are inaccessible due to dense bush and swamps, so Karina's father, Philip, advised her to run her usual route to avoid strangers and unexplored paths. However, Karina's desire for solitude led her to disregard her father's advice. She wandered into a deserted, grassy area. Karina's tranquil moment was short-lived. A severe pain struck the back of her head, and she collapsed. This careless decision proved fatal for she. 2 hours had passed since they bid farewell to their youngest daughter, and she was nowhere to be found. The Philip household became enveloped in anxiety and uncertainty. She should have returned home by now or at least responded to her parents' calls, as she had promised to carry her cell phone with her. Karina's father sensed something was wrong and decided to seek help from his neighbor, who happened to be the chief of the New York City Police Department. Since they had a good relationship, the chief knew Philip wouldn't contact him without a valid concern. After that, Karina was reported missing, and police launched a search for her, focusing on the park area and surrounding streets. Experienced K-9 units were brought in to aid in the search. It's well known that the first 24 hours after someone vanishes are the most critical and revealing. To maximize the chances of finding the missing person, law enforcement utilized every resource available. Meanwhile, Philip, along with a group of volunteers, conducted his own search for his daughter. He thoroughly scoured the park, making phone calls as he searched. As dusk fell, Philip spotted something in the grass and walked towards it. As he approached, He recognized Karina's phone and hoped she might have just misplaced it. However, as he cautiously made his way through the thicket towards the police officers, he stumbled upon something in the grass. He then stumbled upon the partially undressed body of a female corpse lying face down. Philip turned the body over and was met with a devastating sight. It was the face of his daughter, Karina. A heart-wrenching scream burst from Philip's chest as he realized the unthinkable. It turned out his daughter Karina hadn't lost her phone as he initially thought. The truth was far more devastating. Karina had lost her life. The police rushed to his side as he let out a desperate cry. They gently pulled him away from Karina's body, explaining that the area was now a crime scene and everything needed to be protected as evidence. The silence of the car ride home was oppressive, punctuated only by Mr. Philip's tormented thoughts. He was consumed by the daunting task of breaking the news to his wife about their daughter's tragic passing. Memories of Karina's life flooded his mind. He remembered the day she was born, July 12, 1986, in Queens. From a young age, Philip had been incredibly proud of his second daughter, Karina. She was a model child, obedient, well-mannered, and diligent in her studies. One of his fondest memories was taking the little girl to school for her first day. Karina's academic prowess had led her to earn a master's degree in speech pathology from St. John's University, a testament to her hard work and determination. Karina always wanted to help children, particularly those with autism. Additionally, she was a talented individual with a variety of interests, including traveling and writing. She was also an avid sports enthusiast, with a special fondness for running. Her and her father's similar passion for running brought them closer together. Philip remembered how he had protected her from those who were courting her, not wanting anyone to hurt her. He hoped that one day she would find true love and build a strong family like his own, giving him and his wife wonderful grandkids. As Mr. Philip approached his home, he felt the weight of his emotions. Taking a deep breath, he mustered the strength to put on a brave face. He knew his family needed him to be strong. His wife met him at the door and saw the pain in his face. She didn't need him to say a word, she immediately understood what was wrong. She rushed to his side, embracing him as she burst into tears. Karina's loved ones were understandably shocked and distraught when they learned about her sudden death. It was difficult for them to accept the brutal nature of the attack. The investigation revealed that Karina had put up a fierce struggle. Her clenched fists were proof that she had resisted her attacker until the very end. Injuries such as bruises and abrasions were found on her body, and her athletic clothes were torn. The autopsy revealed that Karina's death was ultimately caused by asphyxiation. However, her skull had also suffered blunt force trauma, likely from being hit with a stone. A visible mark on her neck further confirmed the violent nature of the attack. The forensic examination supported the police's initial suspicions, indicating that the crime was both deeply personal and extremely brutal. Further evidence of the struggle was found under Karina's fingernails. Dirt and grass were found embedded under her nails, indicating she attempted to pull away from her attacker. Specialists also examined her mouth, discovering that several of her teeth were cracked and knocked out, indicating that she had bitten down in self-defense. Karina's neck showed multiple scratches, evidence of the intense struggle she went through. Her attacker's grip had been unrelenting, prompting Karina to grab at her attacker with all her might in an attempt to force them to let go. Karina's strong will to survive was evident in her fierce resistance, and she fought valiantly for her life. Following her tragic death, another disturbing discovery found in Howard Beach, Massachusetts, where Karina lived. A second jogger's body was found in a secluded area with dense foliage, causing concern that a serial offender may be at large. To investigate these similarities, geneticists compared DNA samples collected from both crime scenes. DNA samples were discovered on both victims. However, the DNA analysis yielded an unexpected result. the samples did not match, indicating they belonged to different suspect. Notably, have one DNA sample was found under Karina's fingernails, on her back, and on her phone. Despite the small amount, investigators were able to successfully analyze the evidence. The DNA found at the crime scene was the only lead in the investigation, providing a way to identify the killer. Given that most murders are committed by someone known to the victim, the police couldn't rule out any possibilities. To explore this, Karina's father submitted his DNA for testing, as he was the first person to discover her body. Unfortunately, the testing was done on the same day as Karina's funeral. Karina's other relatives also underwent DNA testing, but no matches were found. Investigators then conducted interviews with Karina's relatives and friends to determine if she had any enemies. However, everyone they spoke to seemed to respect and love her. As a result, the investigators came up with a new theory. The crime was likely committed by someone who targeted Karina because of her physical appearance and was driven by impulsive desires. Feeling stuck, authorities turned to the public for assistance, offering a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the killer's capture. The public responded in large numbers, with over 250 leads, 600 genetic tests, and more than 1,700 reports being compiled. However, despite the extensive effort, the investigation remained unresolved. One major challenge was the possibility that the perpetrator had no prior record of crime, making it even more difficult to identify and catch them. On August 31, 2016, a utility worker reported seeing a suspicious person near the scene of Karina's death. He told police that he saw a man emerge from the bushes in a restricted area of the park and run north. The New York Police Department created a sketch of the suspect based on his description. However, by December 2016, they acknowledged that this individual may have been an innocent bystander. The release of the sketch did not yield any new leads, and the investigation came to a standstill. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the case on December 4, 2016. According to the FBI, the perpetrator was likely familiar with the area, especially the park where the crime occurred. This suggested that the attacker may have lived nearby, which is why they thought it was an ideal location to commit the crime without being detected. As a result, the police were cautious not to show their emergence in the area, knowing the perpetrator might be avoiding them to avoid capture. To follow up on the investigation, the police also conducted screenings of local African American men who fit the suspect's description. However, this effort did not lead to any breakthroughs in the case. Detective John Russo, who was part of the investigation, recalled an important detail. He had noticed a young man in a hoodie frequently walking around the park. John even tried to follow him out of curiosity about his strange behavior. The young man moved slowly and paused for extended periods in front of houses near the park, as if he were looking for targets to rob. However, then John lost track of him. 2 months later, a store owner reported seeing a person who looked similar. This made John rethink his earlier observations. He re-examined the file of a teenager matching the description, whose name was Chanel Lewis. Detectives became interested in Chanel because of his strange behavior. They started asking questions to his friends and teachers to gather more information. It was discovered that Chanel had shown interest in harming the girls, which made investigators more suspicious of him. No other leads, officers decided to focus on Chanel. Chanel's life was unremarkable, mirroring that of many young African Americans in Brooklyn's low-income housing. He resided in a housing complex several miles from Spring Creek Park, where he lived with his mother, 3 sisters, and their children. Chanel was unemployed, but despite being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he managed to graduate from a private school catering to students with emotional and behavioral challenges. Chanel's former classmates described him as a quiet and isolated individual who was frequently bullied and belittled by his peers. He had no close friends and was often ridiculed for his appearance and clothing choices. However, after being teased, Chanel would typically smirk and walk away rather, earning him the derogatory nickname African Lizard. Not everyone saw Chanel in a negative light, though. A classmate named Danielle remembered him as intelligent, with good grades, who would occasionally share amusing videos with her on the bus. Danielle never witnessed Chanel displaying cruel behavior. According to some sources, Chanel once claimed that he wanted to slit the throats of all the girls in high school. He then asked, "What if he bring a knife to school?" However, Dr. Edward Dana, the executive director of Lewis's school, asserted that Chanel never harmed anyone during that time, nor was he disciplined. Despite this, Chanel struggled with bullying during his teenage years, which left him traumatized. Nevertheless, he aspired to work in social services, driven by a desire to help people in distress. Whenever conflicts arose at home, he would often take long walks, frequently visiting a local park. Chanel had a few minor run-ins with the police. 2 incidents occurred in the Spring Creek area for ordinance violations, and another took place in May 2016 for urinating in public. In another incident, a store owner reported he for loitering with a crowbar, but responding officers released him after checking his ID and finding no prior incidents. The police kept this information on record. It was later discovered that during the time of Karina's death, Chanel was not at home. After an argument with his family, he had gone to the park. Upon his return, his appearance was disheveled, with torn clothing and visible bruises and abrasions. Chanel's mother inquired about what had happened, and he claimed he had been attacked. His account matched the timeline with a witness's description of a man fleeing the park. Additionally, on August 3, 2016, Chanel's father, a former school principal, took him to the hospital for treatment of severe wounds, most of which were cuts, and he also had an injured hand. The investigators reviewed the medical records from that day and found the story plausible. On February 4, 2017, Chanel was brought to the police station and voluntarily provided his DNA for analysis. Would a perpetrator willingly do this? Detectives wondered. The interrogation began on the morning of February 5. He admitted that he was indeed in the park around 5 p.m. on August 2, 2016, but clarified he was walking on dirt paths, not through the thickets, and listening to music. He confessed to encountering a young woman jogging with her phone in her hand. When asked by detectives if something happened when he encountered her, Chanel nodded and quietly said yes. Chanel's vague answers to investigators left everyone confused. He eventually said he was angry and that what happened happened. Investigators were skeptical of this confession, as it could raise questions for the jury at trial. They hoped Chanel would provide more details. Chanel explained that he had gone for a walk in the park to clear his mind after a family argument. Then he saw Karina walking alone and decided to follow her. He said that as she passed him, he grabbed her by the shoulders, wrestled her to the ground, and hit her in the face about 5 times to stop her from screaming. He said his punches knocked out some of her teeth and he injured her hand. Chanel noted that the struggle lasted about 5 minutes, during which she fought back violently, scratching and biting his. Chanel dragged her off the path into tall grass, where he tried to undress and assault her. Despite her shock, she continued to resist until Chanel strangled her. Then he realizing only afterward that she was no longer alive. When asked if he had known the victim before, he replied, he did not know her before this. It all happened by chance. The motive for his actions was even more surprising. He revealed that loud music from a neighborhood gang member had triggered his anger and uncontrollable aggression. Negative emotions were directed at the unfortunate woman, which seemed like a strange reason for the act. Investigators were no longer confused after obtaining DNA results that matched exactly. Microscopic traces found on Karina's body and phone belonged to Chanel. With this evidence, the police and prosecutor concluded that the case was ready for court. However, the motive still seemed unclear. It's possible that Chanel had seen Karina before, since he often visited the park and may have noticed her with her father. He might have developed an interest in her and tried to approach her, but after being rejected, he became angry and attacked her, resulted in a tragic incident. This explanation would make more sense. The trial against Chanel Lewis began on November 5, 2018. Despite his previous statements to the authorities, he pleaded not guilty, a claim supported by his family, who denied his involvement in the crime. The prosecution charged Chanel with murder and sexual assault, with potential penalties ranging from 25 years or life in prison. The debate about Chanel's guilt played out not only in the courtroom but also in the media. Chanel's defense team questioned whether the police followed proper procedures during his arrest, along with various news outlets alleging racial bias and discrimination. However, the judge dismissed these claims as unfounded, stating that the investigation followed legal procedures. The prosecution provided solid evidence and DNA analysis results. In contrast, the defense argued that the evidence was inadequate and compromised due to the high number of people present at the crime scene, including the victim's father, who found her body. Forensic biologist Linda Rosano noted that the likelihood of the DNA matching someone other than Chanel was 1 in 6 trillion. The prosecutor also presented his phone records, which showed internet searches related to second chances and forgiveness in Catholicism, raising the question of what sin Chanel was trying to make amends for. Additionally, the release of Chanel's confession video led to more controversy, because his lawyer asserted that he confessed under great pressure from the police. They alleged that police may have fabricated evidence by starting the recording only after Chanel was coerced and that the search of his home did not follow proper procedures. The defense argued that the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death was mishandled at the start. As public pressure for the suspect's arrest grew, Chanel Lewis became the scapegoat. The jury took the defense's arguments seriously but still had difficulty reaching a verdict. This led the judge to declare a mistrial on November 21, 2018. A retrial was initially set for January 22, 2019, but was later rescheduled for March. After 5 hours of reconsideration, Chanel Lewis was found guilty of Karina Vetrano's murder and sentenced to life without parole on July 23, 2019. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masney. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Rhonda Casto. Julia Simmons lives with Stephen Nichols, a divorced stock trader, in his 3-bedroom house outside Portland, Oregon. Julia and Stephen met online while she was looking for a place to rent. Julia was impressed by Stephen's charm and kindness. While living together, Stephen met Rhonda Casto, Julia's 20-year-old daughter. Although he is 10 years older than Rhonda, Stephen was attracted to her beauty and admirable personality. Surprisingly, Rhonda also had feelings for Stephen. From there, they began a romantic relationship. As Stephen and Rhonda's relationship became more serious, they decided to live together in Stephen's apartment. During their relationship, Stephen developed a close relationship with Rhonda's family, especially with her 2 sisters, Melanie and Tessa. Tessa, who was 9 years old at the time, was very fond of Stephen because of his fun and playful personality. As the years passed, Stephen and Rhonda lived together but were not married. Rhonda often dreamed of getting married, and her friends knew this. Stephen promised to marry her in the summer of 2009. They had a baby girl, and motherhood became the best thing in Rhonda's life. Her daughter became the center of Rhonda's life, and she cherished every moment with her. She loved being a mother, but also wanted to return to her modeling career. According to Stephen, after giving birth, Rhonda gained a lot of weight and felt unhappy with her body. They decided to hike 25 of the most beautiful trails in Oregon together to help Rhonda lose weight. Stephen said that their relationship was good, they rarely argued and became closer. However, Rhonda's friends told a different story. They revealed that Rhonda had confided in them about Stephen's abuse. Rhonda even took pictures of her back in the mirror to document the bruises Stephen had caused. On March 16, 2009, Stephen and Rhonda, both 23 years old, went hiking together on the Eagle Creek Trail. During the hike, Rhonda took a picture of Stephen using his cell phone. Before leaving, Rhonda jokingly texted her mother, saying, "He's either going to give me a ring or throw me off a cliff. Haha." Initially, the weather was nice. However, Stephen later said that Rhonda began to act strangely. According to Stephen, Rhonda asked him what would happen if something happened to her and if he would take care of their daughter. He replied that of course he would. When the weather started to get worse, Stephen suggested that they go home. Stephen said that Rhonda wrapped a towel around her shoulders, called herself Superman, and ran down the narrow, slippery path. Stephen said he witnessed Rhonda slip and fall about 150 feet down the cliff on the Eagle Creek Trail. Stephen said he went down the ravine where Rhonda fell because he couldn't get a cell phone and held her body. He tried to call 911 but got no signal, so he left Rhonda and walked to the trailhead to contact rescuers. Rescuers then took Rhonda's body away. Rhonda's family claimed that Stephen showed no emotion at the funeral, but Stephen denied this and said that he cried a lot. He explained that when he was really sad, he would pull away from people and want to be alone. Immediately after Rhonda's death, Stephen quickly packed up his and his daughter's belongings and moved to the other side of Oregon to be closer to his family. This move left Rhonda's family feeling suspicious and wondering what had happened between Stephen and Rhonda in the final moments before she died. In 2012, Stephen decided to leave the United States to live with his daughter in China. This decision marked a new turning point in the lives of both father and daughter. Stephen decided to move to Wuxi, a city about 75 miles from Shanghai. He had lived in China during his previous marriage and had developed a deep love for the country and its people. During his time in China, Stephen worked as a teacher of English to Chinese businessmen. His and Rhonda's daughter, Ava, quickly adapted to her new life. Within 2 months of moving in, she was speaking fluent Mandarin. Both Stephen and his daughter are thriving and happy in China. Stephen met and fell in love with Landy Yen. Landy and Ava formed a strong bond, with Landy taking on the role of a mother figure. Stephen appreciated how Landy had stepped in and embraced the role of a parental figure to his daughter. After a year of dating, Stephen decided to take the next step in their relationship by proposing to Landy. He was very happy when she said yes. In February 2015, Stephen and Landy returned to the United States to prepare for their wedding. They decided to have 2 wedding ceremonies, one in the United States and one in China, to accommodate both families and friends. Stephen and his daughter arrived in the United States the day before Landy. When they got off the plane in San Francisco to transfer to Oregon, Stephen was approached by police and informed that they needed to arrest him for baggage issues. Stephen had no idea that this would lead to a series of events that would change his life forever. Within minutes, the police separated Stephen from his daughter. Little did he know that while he was in China, detectives had been investigating the death of his ex-girlfriend Rhonda. The suspicious circumstances surrounding Rhonda's fall from Eagle Creek prompted them to continue their investigation, and they eventually concluded that Stephen was responsible for her death. Rhonda's mother was instrumental in keeping the investigation moving forward. She regularly contacted the detectives to keep them updated. The police arrested Stephen at the airport for Rhonda's murder and took him back to Oregon. When he was arrested, Stephen claimed that he thought he was dreaming. Stephen hoped to open his eyes and find himself back home in China with Landy. However, this was not a dream, but reality. Stephen's bail was set at $2 million. He was jailed for 14 months awaiting trial. The judge reduced Stephen's bail to $250,000, which his attorney paid. Stephen was released on bail but must wear an ankle monitor. When Rhonda's family learned of Stephen's arrest for murder, they were overjoyed that justice had finally been served. Rhonda's mother, in particular, was overcome with emotion and burst into tears upon hearing the news. Stephen's arrest brought relief and comfort to Rhonda's family, who had been grieving her loss for years. After Stephen's arrest, his legal team conducted an investigation at the Eagle Creek trailhead where Rhonda died. Their goal was to conduct tests that would prove to the court that Rhonda's death was the result of a slip and fall accident, not Stephen's pushing her. During a preliminary hearing, Rhonda's autopsy revealed that all of her injuries were below the waist. This finding became a key element of Stephen's defense strategy, providing the basis for arguing that Rhonda committed suicide, not murder. Stephen's defense argued that Rhonda's pelvic injuries were caused by the impact of her fall. They argued that the evidence showed that Rhonda fell feet first, not somersaulting, suggesting that she had been pushed. In addition to presenting evidence of Rhonda's injuries, the defense also wanted to introduce notes from her therapy sessions as additional evidence. The notes show that Rhonda was depressed but never suicidal. Rhonda also described her relationship with Stephen as lacking love. Stephen's defense attorney argued that Rhonda's depression and the way she described the relationship were signs that she was suicidal. They introduced this evidence to cast doubt on the claim that Stephen pushed Rhonda to cause her death. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had attempted suicide multiple times before they met. Rhonda's family denied these allegations and said Stephen was lying. They accused Stephen of blaming Rhonda for her suicide to cover up his crimes. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had been abusing drugs since she was 12 years old. According to the medical examiner's report, Rhonda used only small amounts of marijuana and prescription medications to treat postpartum depression and anxiety. This contradicts his claim that she abused multiple substances. During the preliminary hearing for Rhonda's murder, a shocking revelation was made. Stephen, in his early 30s, had been having an affair with Rhonda's 16-year-old sister, Melanie. This came as a surprise to many due to the significant age difference between them. The prosecution argued that this inappropriate relationship may have been the motive for Stephen's murder of Rhonda. They believed that Rhonda had discovered her husband's behavior, leading to tension that may have led Stephen to kill her. After being arrested for Rhonda's murder, Stephen was indicted on 5 additional counts of sexual abuse against Rhonda's sister, Melanie Casto. Specifically, 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault and 3 counts of third-degree oral copulation. While awaiting trial for the 2005 murder, Stephen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual abuse. He signed a statement admitting to having sex with Melanie Casto on 2 occasions. However, Stephen later claimed that he was coerced into confessing and that his confession was untrue. Stephen explained that he only confessed because he believed doing so would allow him to fight and have a chance to regain custody of his daughter. Stephen claimed that he wanted his daughter back and felt desperate. However, the state pointed out that the relationship between Stephen and Melanie had lasted for more than 4 years. Stephen later admitted to having sex with Rhonda's teenage sister, Melanie. The state presented evidence in the form of a text message from Rhonda to Melanie. In the text message, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of trash and accused him of using Melanie to hurt her. This occurred before the fateful hike at Eagle Creek, where Rhonda died after falling. Rhonda's mother claimed that her daughter knew that Stephen was trying to drive a wedge between the 2 sisters. She added that Rhonda loved her sister and wanted to mend her relationship with Melanie. The state concluded that Rhonda and Stephen's relationship was not as amicable as Stephen claimed. The court received additional evidence of Stephen's past sexual misconduct. Just 6 months after his daughter's mother died, Stephen was arrested and charged with 5 counts of sexual abuse of a 13-year-old girl. Although he initially denied it, Stephen later admitted to sending sexually explicit text messages and nude photos to the victim. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of sexual harassment. During the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor presented photos of bruises on Rhonda's back. Rhonda's best friend testified that she had heard Rhonda and Stephen arguing on the phone on multiple occasions. This evidence suggested that the relationship between Stephen and Rhonda was abusive. In addition to the photographic evidence, the court heard testimony from Stephen's ex-wife, who alleged that in November 2003, Stephen tried to strangle her and throw her over the balcony of their 5th-floor apartment. However, Stephen was not charged and denied all charges. For their part, Rhonda's family firmly believes that Stephen, her boyfriend, is responsible for Rhonda's death. Police suspect he killed Rhonda to collect her life insurance. Her mother said Stephen had lost a lot of money trading stocks the previous year and was struggling financially. In addition, people who knew Rhonda said she loved her 9-month-old daughter very much and could not have killed herself by jumping into Eagle Creek. In May 2017, Rhonda's family was shocked to learn that the state had reached a plea deal with the defense attorney. Stephen pleaded guilty to manslaughter based on criminal negligence. Although he believed he killed her, the lack of physical evidence that he pushed her off the trail in Eagle Creek made the case weak. Stephen was given credit for time served while awaiting trial, but was given 3 years of probation. After removing his ankle monitor, Stephen was released. Rhonda's family and friends said Stephen's plea deal was unfair and that he deserved a harsher sentence. During the sentencing hearing, Rhonda's sister gave an emotional statement. She expressed anger and frustration toward Stephen, saying that he had destroyed their family and caused immeasurable pain. Rhonda's mother also expressed confusion and grief, unable to understand how Stephen could have taken her daughter away from her and torn their family apart. Stephen insisted that he did not force Rhonda, but accepted the deal because the time limit for regaining custody of his daughter was about to expire. He said that he was willing to take responsibility for his actions for the sake of his daughter. However, Rhonda's family and friends still did not believe Stephen's explanation. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made a shocking statement about Rhonda's fate. According to Stephen, on the day of Rhonda's accident, when he walked down the Eagle Creek Trail and found her, Rhonda was still alive. The interviewer then asked Stephen if he had put Rhonda out of pain that day. Stephen responded by presenting a hypothetical scenario of mercy killing. He argued that such an act could be considered justifiable homicide, although it would still be murder. Although Stephen did not directly admit to harming Rhonda, his comments implied that he was involved in her death. In 2017, Rhonda's mother filed for Social Security benefits for her niece, Rhonda's daughter, Ava. She claimed that her niece lived with her and promised to use the benefits to care for the baby. However, the state alleges that from April 2010 to December 2014, the time Rhonda's mother claimed her niece lived with her, the child actually lived with her biological father, Stephen. Rhonda's mother is accused of stealing nearly $40,000 from the government over a 5-year period. Her defense attorney argued that her actions were motivated by a desire to prevent Stephen from gaining custody of Rhonda's daughter and from benefiting from Rhonda's $1 million life insurance policy. According to the attorney, Rhonda's mother's goal was to protect her granddaughter from being taken advantage of. They also pointed out that she had a history of depression, which became worse after her daughter died. To cope with the pain, she used marijuana as a way to self-medicate. The defense argued that her use of the drug impaired her judgment and thinking. The judge sentenced Rhonda's mother, 53, to 1 month in prison and 3 years of probation after she pleaded guilty to welfare fraud. In addition to the sentence, she was ordered to repay $39,100 in stolen benefits. Rhonda and Stephen's daughter was placed in foster care in October 2015 after the Department of Human Services stripped them of parental rights. The decision came after Stephen pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. The Oregon court eventually stripped him of his parental rights. However, Stephen has appealed the decision. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lori K. Soares. Lori K. Soares was born on December 31, 1976, in Fullerton, California, and spent the first 2 years of her life in a children's orphanage. Her birth parents' identities remain unknown. At the age of 2, Lori was adopted by Thelma and Geraldo Suarez, a devout couple who met while serving as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Rio de Janeiro. Geraldo, originally from São Paulo, Brazil, worked as a teacher at Sunny Hills High School. Geraldo, who did not have their own biological children, adopted Lori, and later, they also adopted a boy named Paul. In 1987, Lori's adoptive parents divorced, and she stayed with her mother, Thelma, along with her adopted brother Paul. The family moved to Utah, where Lori and Paul high school and then registered to a local university. Lori grew up into a kind and dynamic young man. Lori was very close to her adopted mother Thelma. At the age of 19, Lori met Mark Douglas Hack. Born in April 1976 in North Carolina, his father, Douglas, was a famous pediatrician, and his mother, Helena, was a nurse. Mark's brother, Scotty and Lance, also pursued a successful career in science. Mark is pursuing a career in medicine, following his family's footsteps. Mark is very thoughtful. Lori loved Mark at first sight. After 5 years of love, Lori and Mark were married. They settled in a small house in Salt Lake City, Utah. At that time, Lori graduated and was an assistant director of a senior at a large company with a good salary. Mark, who has just graduated from the University of Utah with a psychology and attended medical school in North Carolina, where he and his wife will move in the summer of 2004. In June 2004, Lori became pregnant with their first child. The couple was overjoyed and happy. Lori was transferred to the company's North Carolina branch, and Mark, who had graduated from medical school, was expected to work as a physician at a major medical center. On July 19, 2004, Lori disappeared. Mark was worried when Lori did not return home after her normal morning exercise at the local park. Initially, Mark said that Lori drove directly to the office to work. After calling to work and knowing that Lori was absent, Mark immediately called the police and reported the situation. The police listened to Mark's story and explained to him that the missing and adult search would be started after 24 hours of disappearance. Not wanting to wait, Mark was planning to start looking for Lori. Mark walked to the park that Lori jogged that day and saw her car parked at the edge of the neighborhood, but she disappeared. Later, Mark returned home and started calling friends, relatives, and colleagues, trying to determine the last time people saw or talked to Lori. Unfortunately, Lori did not contact anyone. The news of Lori's disappearance has been spread widely. Before the police participated in searching efforts, hundreds of people, including relatives, friends, and strangers heard about the case, began to search for Lori. They also distributed leaflets with photos of Lori. By July 20th, when Lori's disappearance was officially reported, the story has attracted significant attention from the media. A press conference in the city of Salt Lake was held, where Mark called for the help of the public. Mark cried and begged anyone with information about Lori. In the evening, about 1,000 people participated in the search. The police investigation led them to Lori's car, but when checked, they could not find any evidence or clues in the car. However, the police have noticed something unusual, which is the position of the driver's seat. The fact is that Lori is quite small, but the chair is moved back so much that it can fit an adult man, and Lori himself cannot reach the pedal. Mark's home search showed an unexpected discovery: Lori's car keys were indoors. This has raised an important question, because Lori parked a car near the park and did not return home. The appearance of the indoor key immediately showed Mark related to the disappearance of Lori's disappearance. However, Mark explained that when he found the car, the key was still in the car and he took home. Although this new discovery was not enough to arrest Mark, Mark was listed by the police in the list of potential suspects in Lori's disappearance. One day after Lori was reported missing, the police received a report that Mark was seen running naked and not awake on the street, concerned about Mark's mental health. A medical group from a psychiatric clinic was sent to assess his situation, and many believed that the stress of his missing wife made Mark crazy. However, police suspected that Mark could be pretending to lose his mind to avoid responsibility. Police asked for a search for Mark and Lori's house. While Mark is being evaluated at the psychiatric department, the police have found worrying evidence. Evidence was discovered in the bedroom. The police found the blood stain was washed in Mark's bedroom, and the bloody bed sheet. At the same time, a completely new spring mattress lying on the bed, the receipt of buying the mattress found in the bedside cabinet. Considered by the date and time on the receipt, the mattress was bought on the morning of July 19th, according to Mark's words. At that time, Mark was going to the park to find his wife. In addition, under the closet, the police found a kitchen knife with dry blood stains. In the living room, police found an envelope. Inside the envelope is a letter written by Lori. In the letter, she made the decision to end their relationship due to Mark's unfaithfulness during the marriage, which made Lori lose faith in Mark. Police concluded that Mark was really related to Lori's disappearance. Douglas Hacking, Mark's father, provided detailed information about the situation. Douglas said that Mark had never graduated from Utah University or became a psychologist granted a certificate. In fact, Mark was kicked out of university 2 years ago, right after getting married to Lori. However, he was afraid people would be disappointed, especially Lori, so Mark continued to deceive them by pretending to go to school, completing his homework and preparing to graduate. Mark said his father knew about a month before the tragedy occurred. Mark Douglas, Mark's father, advised Mark to confess everything with Lori. But Mark continued to lie, saying that he was accepted to a prestigious medical school due to excellent academic achievements in psychology. Lori was still unaware of Mark's lie about his education. Lori and Mark had planned to move to another state to make Mark's schooling more convenient, and Lori had even started changing her job to accommodate Mark's schooling. However, Mark's father, Douglas, revealed everything to Lori, which shocked her. Lori's co-workers noticed that she had been crying for days, but Lori chose to confide in a close friend. The friend suggested that Lori write a letter expressing her pain and anxiety, and the letter was found by police in Mark's home. 6 days after Lori's disappearance, Mark was in a psychiatric hospital when he was visited by his 2 brothers on July 25. During this visit, Mark unexpectedly confessed to his brothers that he was responsible for Lori's death, saying that he had shot her with a .22 caliber rifle. During a search of the dumpster, police recovered a cut mattress spring with blood and black hair, which police confirmed belonged to Lori. Mark told his 2 brothers that he had dumped Lori's body in the dumpster after packing it. Based on that clue, police worked with hundreds of volunteers to search the city's massive landfill with the help of sniffer dogs. However, due to Mark's unstable mental health, it is possible that his testimony was false. Although police suspect Mark killed his wife, his attorney asserted that this could not be proven until the body was found. However, on August 2, Mark was charged with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice, and was transferred to the prison's mental health facility. On August 9, Lori was officially declared dead, and the search for her body became a top priority for the police. The work continued for 2 months, with searchers shoveling tons of trash from the city's landfill in search of Lori's body. On October 1, 2004, Lori's remains were discovered at the landfill. That same day, a forensic examination confirmed that they were indeed those of Lori. According to the investigation, police said that since Lori discovered that Mark had lied to her throughout their marriage, he had not graduated and had not applied to medical school as he had said. On July 18, Lori wrote a letter to Mark expressing her intention to divorce Mark because of his dishonesty. However, instead of agreeing to the divorce, Mark shot Lori to death while she was sleeping in bed at night. He used a rifle to commit the crime and then tried to cover his tracks, trying to make it appear that Lori had disappeared. Initially, the prosecution intended to seek the death penalty for Mark. However, Mark's unstable mental health led to the sentence being changed to life imprisonment. In April 2005, Mark, faced with overwhelming evidence and after consulting with a lawyer, finally confessed to the murder. However, Mark could not provide a clear motive for his actions. He broke down in tears, saying that Lori was the best thing that had ever happened to him and that he was disillusioned by losing her. According to his account, on the night of the murder, Mark lost control, grabbed a gun and shot Lori while she was sleeping. Mark attributed his mental instability to the pressure from his family to achieve high academic results and excel in all areas. After dropping out of college, he felt ashamed of not meeting other people's expectations. On June 6, 2005, Mark was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with the opportunity to apply for parole after 2035. All of Mark's appeals and those filed by his attorney were ultimately rejected.